Sophia Stephen was a young woman with dreams much bigger than her modest life allowed. At just 23 years old, she worked tirelessly at Lisa's Diner, a small, run-down restaurant in the heart of New York City. The chipped paint on the walls and the constant hum of the neon "open" sign outside mirrored her struggles, yet she always managed to smile. Sophia had a gift, not just for serving customers, but for making people feel seen and valued. Despite her long shifts and meager wages, Sophia had a habit that made her stand out. Every night after her shift, she would gather leftover food from the diner and distribute it to the homeless people she passed on her walk home. To her, it was a small act of kindness, but to those she helped, it meant the world. On one particularly cold evening, rain poured relentlessly, soaking the city streets. Sophia hurried home, clutching her worn jacket tightly around her. She noticed a small figure huddled under a bus stop shelter. It was a young boy, no older than 8, shivering in the storm, his clothes soaked through. She paused, her heart aching at the sight. "Hey there," she said gently, kneeling beside him. "Are you okay? Where are your parents?" The boy looked up, his face pale and frightened. "I don't have anyone," he whispered. "I'm hungry." Without a second thought, Sophia took his hand and led him back to the diner. The rain soaked them both, but she didn't care. Once inside, she wrapped him in a warm blanket and served him a steaming bowl of soup. The boy's face lit up as he ate, and for the first time that night, Sophia felt a sense of warmth in her chest, despite the cold. What Sophia didn't realize was that someone had been watching. Across the street, a sleek black car was parked, its engine idling softly. Inside sat David Brin, a billionaire known for his sharp business mind and private demeanor. He had been driving through the area after a stressful day, hoping the quiet streets would clear his head. But then he saw her. At first, it was just curiosity. Why was a young woman out in the rain, kneeling beside a homeless boy? But as David watched Sophia lead the boy to the diner and take care of him, he couldn't look away. Her actions were so genuine, so selfless, that they struck a chord deep within him. "Who is she?" David murmured to himself, his gaze fixed on the diner. For the first time in years, David felt something stir inside him, a sense of wonder and admiration he couldn't quite explain. He scribbled down the name of the diner and drove away. But the image of Sophia stayed with him long after he returned to his luxurious penthouse. The next few days were a blur for Sophia. Between juggling double shifts and taking care of her younger brother, who relied on her to pay for his school fees, she barely had time to think about the boy she had helped. But the memory of his smile lingered, giving her strength to push through her exhaustion. Meanwhile, David couldn't stop thinking about the waitress. He had everything money could buy, yet he couldn't shake the image of her, soaking wet in the rain, offering warmth and kindness to someone who had nothing. It wasn't just her actions that captivated him. It was the purity of her heart. He needed to know more about her. One evening, David made a decision. Dressed in a tailored suit that seemed out of place for a diner, he walked through the door of Lisa's. The bell above the door jingled softly, drawing Sophia's attention. She was balancing a tray of plates, her hair slightly frizzy from the humidity, but her smile was as radiant as ever. David froze for a moment, struck by the familiarity of her face. Sophia greeted him with the same warmth she offered all her customers. "Welcome to Lisa's. Have a seat anywhere you like," she said, her voice cheerful despite the weariness in her eyes. David chose a corner booth, his gaze following her every move as she worked. She treated everyone with the same kindness he had seen that rainy night. She helped an elderly customer count his change, offered a free coffee refill to a struggling mother, and even paused to check on a regular who seemed unusually quiet. Every interaction confirmed what David already knew: this woman was extraordinary. When his meal was finished, David handed Sophia the bill without saying much. But as he left, he slipped an envelope under his plate. Sophia didn't notice it until she went to clear the table. Inside was a stack of crisp bills, far more than any normal tip. Her hands trembled as she counted the money, her mind racing with questions. She ran outside, searching for the mysterious man. But he was already gone. The sleek black car she had noticed earlier was nowhere in sight. For the rest of the night, Sophia couldn't stop wondering. Who was he? And why had he left such a generous tip? The next morning, the restaurant buzzed with activity. Sophia tied on her apron and began her shift, unaware of how drastically her life was about to change. Her mind was still on the homeless boy she had helped just a few days ago. She hoped he had found a safe place to rest. But her focus quickly turned back to the customers filing in for breakfast. Around midday, the restaurant's front door swung open. A tall, sharply dressed man entered. His tailored suit and polished shoes stood out among the casual diners. Sophia didn't notice him at first, as she was busy taking an elderly couple's order. But when the hostess approached her, whispering, "That gentleman over there asked for you to be his server." Sophia glanced at the man in surprise. She didn't recognize him at first. But when their eyes met, a strange sense of familiarity tugged at her. The man smiled warmly, his gaze lingering as if he were studying her. Sophia shrugged off the odd feeling and approached his table, notepad and pen in hand. "Good afternoon," she said with her usual friendly tone. "What can I get you today?" The man hesitated for a moment before replying. "I'll take the special of the day. But only if you promise to take a break and join me for coffee later." Sophia blinked, caught off guard by his request. "Oh, I'm sorry, but I don't usually take breaks during my shift. Is there anything else you'd like with your order?" The man chuckled. "Just the special for now," he said, handing her the menu. As Sophia walked away, she couldn't shake the feeling that something about him was different. Like he knew her, but was choosing not to say so. As the meal progressed, the man observed Sophia closely. He saw how she treated every customer with patience and kindness, no matter how busy or stressful it got. She carried trays with practiced ease, smiled at even the grumpiest diners, and checked on everyone's tables to make sure they were satisfied. To him, it was clear. Sophia wasn't just hardworking. She was extraordinary. Sophia stood frozen, staring at the man as he walked away. Her heart pounded in her chest as she looked down at the folded piece of paper he had left behind. Slowly, she unfolded it. Her breath caught in her throat. A check for $50,000. Beneath the staggering amount, there was a handwritten note. "Your kindness has inspired me. Use this to create the future you deserve. A grateful stranger." Sophia's hands trembled as she clutched the check. Her mind spun in disbelief. Who was this man? Why had he given her such an unbelievable gift? And why did he seem so familiar? She ran outside, scanning the street for any sign of him. But he was gone. The sleek black car had disappeared into the city streets. That night, as she sat in her tiny apartment, the check still in her hands, Sophia felt overwhelmed. She had never seen so much money in her life. She wanted to return it, it was far too much for her to accept. But there was no contact information, no way to find him. She thought about her struggles. The unpaid bills. Her brother's tuition. Her dream of opening a cafe where everyone, including the homeless, could find a warm meal and a welcoming smile. Could this be the break she had been waiting for? Days turned into weeks, and Sophia's life began to change. She used a portion of the money to pay off her debts. She set aside enough for her brother's education, ensuring he wouldn't have to struggle the way she had. And the rest, she put toward her dream. With determination in her heart, Sophia began searching for a small space to rent. A place where she could create a cafe not just for customers, but for those who had nowhere else to go. A place where kindness came before profits. Little did she know, her mysterious benefactor was still watching. One evening, as she was locking up the diner, a familiar sleek black car pulled up beside her. The window rolled down, and there he was, the generous stranger from the restaurant. "I hoped I'd find you," he said with a warm smile. Sophia's heart pounded. "You again? Why did you give me that money? Who are you?" The man stepped out of the car, his expression serious but kind. "I owe you an explanation," he said. "My name is David Brin. I'm the CEO of West Design Enterprises." Sophia's jaw dropped. West Design Enterprises was one of the biggest companies in the country. David Brin was a billionaire. "I didn't tell you who I was because I wanted to see how you'd react," he continued. "I've spent years building wealth, but I've never seen anyone as selfless as you. Helping that homeless boy. It wasn't just an act of kindness. It showed who you truly are." Sophia was speechless, struggling to process everything. "But why would someone like you care about me? I'm just a waitress." David smiled. "You're far more than that. You have a heart that money can't buy. And I believe the world needs more people like you." He handed her an envelope. "This is a deed to a small cafe downtown. It's yours now. Consider it an investment in someone who deserves it." Tears welled up in Sophia's eyes. She tried to refuse, but David insisted. "Just promise me one thing," he said. "Keep being the person who inspired me. Keep helping others." From that day forward, Sophia's life transformed. Her cafe became a haven for those in need, just as she had always dreamed. She served warm meals to the homeless, created a space where struggling families could find comfort, and inspired others to give back. News of her kindness spread. People came from all over to support her mission. Her cafe wasn't just a business, it was a movement. And through it all, David Brin remained in her life. Not as a billionaire. Not as a mysterious stranger. But as a friend. And as Sophia stood in the cafe she had built, looking around at the lives she had touched, she finally understood. Kindness, no matter how small, had the power to change the world.